Projects need resources: people to do work, equipment, materials, travel to scope out a location, and so on. Project comes with several types of resources to model the resources you use in the real world. After you define project tasks, you can start identifying the resources you need. When you add those resources to project, you tell the program how much the resources cost and how much they're available. Then, when you assign resources to tasks, project can calculate the schedule and cost, identify overallocations, track progress, and provide information about your project's performance. To see the resources in a project, on the View tab, click Resource Sheet. Project offers several types of resources. The work resource type is the one you'll use most often, but material and cost resources come in a close second and third. Time is the critical factor with work resources. People and equipment are available to work only so many hours in a day, and even then, they might not be available to work full-time on your project. For example, the IT manager is available only 25% of the time on the office move project because the rest of her time is spent keeping the IT infrastructure up and running. Resources can have their own calendars, which is great for setting aside a resource's vacation time or specifying a non-standard work week. Work resources availability affects the project schedule. In this case, the amount of time that's available is listed in the maximum units column. At the same time, you can see that project doesn't care whether you use people's names or generic titles. Using titles or skills as placeholder names means you can figure out how many resources you need with different types of skills. Then, when you obtain warm bodies, you can add their names to your project file and replace the placeholder resources with real people. Work resources costs usually depend on the amount of time you use them, whether you pay an electrician by the hour or rent a crane by the day. The IT manager's hourly rate is $80 per hour. With materials, you use quantities, not time. The cost of materials do affect the cost of your project. And for material resources, the material label field is where you tell project the units you use to measure the material, whether it's cubic yards of concrete, gallons of paint, or reams of paper. For example, with a brochure, you pay for it by the piece. The only time materials affect the schedule is when you have to wait for the materials to arrive. On the other hand, cost resources are specifically for additional costs not related to work or material resources. Travel, fees, utilities, mobile phone usage are all examples of pure costs that work well as cost resources. With cost resources, you could track how much you spend on different types of costs. If you assign the lodging cost resource to each task that requires an overnight stay, you can see the total cost for lodging. If you have cost resources for airfare and for mileage, you can compare how much you spend for flying versus driving. But cost resources work a little differently than work and material resources. You don't apply a cost when you create a cost resource. Instead, you assign the cost when you apply the resource to a task, as you'll learn in a later movie. Work resources are perfect for resources you use for periods of time, like people and equipment. Material resources handle the supplies and other consumable items you use to complete a project, and cost resources take care of pure cost items like travel and fees. Between these three resource types, you can document everything you need to perform a project.